Good? Okay. Good morning, guys. So I have a strong feeling about interesting kids in space exploration. I want them to want it. I want them to get beyond the basic stupidities of the moment and think about colonizing Venus and Mars. The only way it's going to happen is to have some dumb kid fantasize about it, to get his ray gun, jump into a ship, and run off with his Wookiee into outer space. It's our only hope, in a way. When asked why he was making the Star Wars movie, that was how George Lucas responded. He did it for the kids. He was appealing to a 14 to 15-year-old audience. I didn't know that. All right, so I've grown up loving the original Star Wars, A New Hope. My father grew up with that, so it's a fandom that's spread across the generations, and so I've just lived my whole life with Star Wars references, and yeah, it's been fun. So today, I'm going to be talking to you about the struggles that they faced when making the first Star Wars. And despite all the great reputation and fame that they faced, they also had to face a lot of difficulties with getting the concept to a film studio, getting it accepted by that film studio, and then just the roadblocks faced with filming and post-filming processes as well. Okay, so with how positively Star Wars: A New Hope was received during its premiere, one would think film studios would be racing each other to get that concept, right? No. Lucas and his colleague / co-writer Gary Kurtz actually struggled getting the idea off the ground. First off, the Star Wars that we all know and love today, with that handsome Han Solo right over there, it's very convenient. That's not what it was. In fact, it was actually right here is a comic concept based off the first script for Star Wars. Han Solo was meant to be an amphibious alien type thing, and Luke Skywalker was meant to be an older, age-withered general. And this was supposed to be kind of his student, his Padawan. It's either Kane or Kane. It's supposed to be related to Anakin Skywalker, but this is Kane Skykiller. So yeah, they had to deal with a lot of fixing that around to get the story less dense. They had to solidify the story. They had to make the scenes that they had planned a lot cheaper than the ones they had planned. And that took about 4 tries. It took them quite a few years and 4 tries to rewrite the script to how we know it as today. Another problem they had was with money. When they were finally accepted by 20th Century Fox, they had a planned budget of $18.5 million. They weren't having that. Fox didn't really want to pay that, so they thought maybe $14.5 million, and they still weren't cutting it for that, so they thought maybe the $8.5 million, cut it in half, that'll get us enough. And so in the end, they finally agreed to a $7.5 million. So that's less than half the budget they were planning to carry out their vision of Star Wars. So that created a lot of roadblocks in what they could and couldn't do. However, later they did get another $3.5 million, but with a lot of arguing from Fox's side. All the struggles that came with finally struggling to gain a film studio to produce this film, you would think like, oh, okay, we're relaxed, we can finally get this thing off the ground. That didn't happen. They didn't get to relax. The problems got worse with filming and production. During the entire film and film production, Lucas kind of struggled with difficulties in editing the film. There were really time-consuming special effects that nobody had really tried up until this point, so it took a while to get to those. And 20th Century Fox was really controlling. So the editors of the film were Lucas himself, his wife Marcia Lucas, Peter Hirsch, and Richard Chew. And they had so much trouble editing because while they did have a lot of content, a lot of it had to be tossed because it was just fluff. He had to get rid of that because he wanted to solidify the story of Star Wars. And so after all that, they didn't exactly have enough content to almost finish the movie. They got it done using some movie magic. And yeah, up next I have a short clip, and it's one of the Tusken Raiders in the first movie attacking Luke Skywalker for the first time. Originally, the actor lifted his staff and then put it back down. This is not what what they did. They used some reverse and playthrough again to make it look like he was shaking. So pay attention to the arms, and you'll be able to see the stiffness of it. Did you guys see that, or did you want to see it one more time? All right. So, yeah. Also, they had a lot of trouble with Mark Hamill, who played Luke Skywalker, because right after the primary filming, he got into a car accident that just completely messed up his nose. So the injuries and the scars while he was recovering from that really discouraged any reshoots with him. So any messed up scenes or any other scenes that they wanted to continue on, they couldn't do that with him, or at least they couldn't do that with his face, so they used his body double. And this actually kind of limited a lot of the leeway that any of the editors would have had to. So, with how successful that the movie was, it's really kind of difficult to imagine all the hardships that they went through. Especially with special effects. They did not finish special effects until well after the live action had taken place. By the time they finished live action, only one special effects scene was finished. And so when the first rough drafting of the movie was put together, a lot of the scary scenes with the big spaceships and everything, they were replaced by historical battle scenes from wars like World War I and World War II. They were the plane fighting scenes. And that was Lucas's attempt to kind of convey how the movie was supposed to go. So this left a lot of his colleagues thinking it was going to be a flop. The only person who really, really enjoyed that rough draft was Spielberg, but they were besties for a long time. So it took about 2 years and $3.5 million to finish the full extent of effects that he wanted. And that included a lot of blowing up miniatures. So, though Star Wars was an exceedingly difficult film to create, giving some the impression of a flop, and even Lucas himself, but despite what people thought the film was going to come out to be, it actually turned out to inspire awe from the audiences all around the world. So, basically, going back, Lucas had to deal with a lot of stuff. He had to deal with overbearing Fox company, he had to deal with editing difficulties, and rewriting his concept so many times. And actually, some of the struggles continued on afterwards. He was actually diagnosed with hypertension and exhaustion afterwards due to the stress he was put under that, and he actually really disliked it because it wasn't his vision. He was an artist, and he felt like he let himself down. But despite all the difficulties, he was still able to make one of the greatest movies of all time. Yeah, so food for thought, guys. May the Fourth be with you.
So Brenda, what did you think?
At the beginning, for the catching our attention, I was kind of confused about the kids in space and all of that. I didn't know where she was going to go with that. But then she did get to the point of the struggles for making Star Wars. So I knew that was going to be her topic, and she did a well job of explaining the struggles that she was going to talk about, according to the movie, and what George Lucas went through. She didn't really cite anyone. I didn't really hear any citations or any validation of the struggles that George Lucas and Gary Kurtz went through. She, I think, went back and forth with the editing and the special effects. There's no, even though we knew what she was going to talk about, there was no real transitions into it. I think the time kind of made you a little bit nervous, which made you wrap it up too quickly, and then even though we thought she was getting to the conclusion, she kept talking about it, and then it was kind of repetitive at the end. And the afterward struggles of George Lucas, I think, were a little bit unnecessary because she had already talked about the struggles of the movie.
All right. Well, you picked out several of the things that I thought were also problematic. I think that you need a much clearer structure for the speech, and that there needs to be some transition between the material. It just starts running together. I think you also need to have a clearer sense of what the goal is for the speech. I know that you want to explore the difficult background of creating the film, but it feels sometimes like you've just randomly picked a few things that they ran into problems with and talked about them. I like the idea of talking about the development of the story and how it originated, how it had to be edited down, how the budget made limitations necessary on the story, how characters might have changed. I think that could be the whole speech if you kind of focused on that and were a little bit more observant about what details changed. I think you'd have something a little bit more compelling here. As it is, it feels like it's really slowly developing. The pace of the presentation is very awkward. You're talking about something that, if we're thinking about the movie, it's exciting and fast and quick and up, and you're kind of very delicate about it and going through it slowly, and I think your energy level needs to be up a little bit more on those things. And part of the problem is that you're trying to put in too many different things, and they just seem to be randomly connected instead of organically connected to each other. He had a little bit of difficulty with the Prezi formatting, but that was not a big deal. That was a minor distraction. The bigger issue, I think, is that you needed a little bit more practice because you sounded uncertain frequently as to where you were going next and what was coming up. And that's one of those things that is addressed by repetition, repetition, repetition. You know what's coming up next. And if you've got simple notes and you've talked about it before, you can just go right to that point. You just seem like you were hesitating at every step in the process, and it needs to flow a little bit more smoothly. Unfortunately, we've kind of reached an awkward point in our time here because we have one more